So when you're working with chewing, okay, chewing is a combination of a lot of things. So the first thing you have is the vaginal canal delivery with full term and the rotation, right? So what happens is that the head sublux moves into position, very much like a champagne cork. If you saw it in slow motion, it mushrooms, right? And this draw creates a palate strike. Now that palate strike, at the same moment, there's foam in the lung, the foam explodes, again, like popping the top of a champagne cork, and atmosphere, pressure, gravity is pushing this way, your foam is this way, and you get that wah! Okay, what that wah does, first of all, and I was just thinking about this last night, I need to put it up again. Do you ever see my video that I posted up where they did the slow motion of the uvula? And that thing's like a little human. Again, rotation, right? So people think that we eat in the bolus. I mean, you're taught that here's your tongue, and the weight goes from here to here, and that's how you swallow. It's not. The very big thing that's important in here is the hyoid bone. It's the only bone, they say it's the only bone that floats in the body. Well, all our bones float in the body, but it's not attached to the skeletal system. So they say it just to anchors the tongue, right? But that hyoid, see any movement like this, that's where the hyoid regulates it. So if the hyoid buoyancy, just like an ice cube, goes too far, it manages the horizon. And this is part of our vestibular system. And this is why kids, too, that don't have a good articulation here, you know what I mean? And they don't do that. Right? See what my hyoid bone's doing? Like a little boat in the water. Like it's a hull, right? And so at 4.5 months, you get pubic bone strike like a Pez dispenser. Now the hyoid bone is shifting. Right? Now, if you've had cannulation, NG2, all of that, where they cinch here, that's where you get this kind of look. Because a hyoid bone hasn't articulated, by meaning it hasn't created its own buoyancy. CP has a big problem with buoyancy. These are my thoughts on that. First of all, a lot of CP is because of prematurity. The premature skeletal system is going to collect less oxygen. So that oxygen collection, because it happens first upon birth, it's what creates all that buoyancy and all that needs to happen. So you'll tend to have that tilt. Another thing too, that hyoid bone has not gone into proper, and this is stuff that I'm sort of working on this week, the atlas, the first bone, is not tilting. So when you see the plant in slow motion out, first comes out this, and then the leaves start coming out like this, right? Like a belly dancer. So that's like what the hyoid bone does as we start going into independent sitting, coming up to sitting, all of that. This is me eating my hamburger. Because it feels all that movement and it regulates when it's in the mouth. So if you have midline issues, upper palate issues, and so forth, you have a problem. Also, why do you have a problem? Chewing comes when you have the absolute horizon and the absolute vertical, right? You're actually know why. Because all chewing is rotational. Like remember the bunny I posted up in slow motion, the bunny eating, and the dandelions going like this? If you look at any chewing, like if I ask, like if you have dental work, right? And you have to chew to the one side, drives you nuts. Yeah. All of a sudden you're like, I can't chew. Chewing is not, it's, so the one leaves are going this way, right? And the skeletal system's going this way. But if you don't come to sitting through the pelvis, I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to have issues with chewing, right? Because it's not setting up the mathematics or the structure needed for that function. Now, if you take a child too, that maybe tilts back too much, we come to our foot. And this is riding a bicycle. This is riding a horse. This is getting out of a chair. All of those kind of movements are you know, they have a hierarchy and they're created on that. And so that's why we start off with peri at first, and the tongue is more messy kid, and then eventually we get into the chew, and then we get into this, like if we're going into steak or something where we can bite it. And then when we can bite it, we can also start licking our lips. We should be able to do this, as well as, like for an ice cream, which is soft, all the way up to again, like if you handed a piece of shrimp to your child, they should go, he's not doing that, right? The morsels still have to come more to his system versus that, you see a typical 1-year-old, and I hate to say that, but they're grabbing for the spoon, you know what I mean? They're doing this. Our kids are like, food. And you're like, open, close, they just don't have that full movement mechanics needed for the whole thing that goes involved into the chew or to the swallow. Now we have to be able to do it in any position. I should be able to chew gum. That's why we don't chew gums when we're babies, you know what I mean? But like here, managing our swallow, we make the joke, all of a sudden it's like, oh, you can't walk into a chew at the same time kind of thing. But we have those dynamics that we should be able to, and that's when we start going into the spinning milestones. So from 2.5 to 5, we have the rolling over, rolling down a hill, going into the bicycle, parents tossing us, kids are like, upside down, hanging. Hanging is a big one, going into the hanging reflex, and then eventually the bicycle and the cartwheel. Now the cartwheel doesn't have to be stellar, but still, kids want to put their hands below their feet somehow and do handstands, headstands, and they do it in play, right? They don't necessarily do it as a gymnast. That's why, too, gymnast programs really shouldn't start below the age of 6. But we push our kids because we want them to be here versus here and let those good foundations. But that also creates the palate, the nasal passages, clearing the airway in a more sophisticated way. I can tell you right now, a child that really doesn't experience those kind of movements is going to really have a hard time mastering things. Whether they're going into their master's or upper level education or the Olympics or Mount Everest, you know what I mean? Kids today aren't climbing trees. Kids today aren't hanging off of trees. I haven't seen a kid hang off of a bar. I can't even tell you how long that's been. I don't see bicycles outside people's houses. We're about to see such a low level of employment and a much higher rate of Alzheimer's, of the adult aging issues, as we're seeing the increases in special needs, just because we're not advancing into our upper milestones. Milestones don't stop at walking, right? And that's it. And then on top of that, with your chewing and eating, as our tastes get more sophisticated, like kids don't eat like a Kobe-style steak with Oscar-style, crab cake on top of it. As our taste increase, you will also see an increase in again, upper education. That palate. I will say that my other son's autism significantly improved and to disappearing when he decided, I'm going to college, I better start learning to eat. And at every new food he ate, social skills changed, all of that, because it excites. Any form of comparison excites the motor cortex, and now that's where food and learning, and that's why, again, we used to be such communal areas with our food. You will see, I don't mean to sound snobbish, like in India and other countries where you have such a high level of spice and cooking, everybody there is like, master's level or higher, right? But when you see people that are eating the same food day in and day out, this is Alzheimer's, this is dementia. It's not as good for our cognitive processing, right? We're meant to try new things, try new foods. It's okay to try it and say, hey, I don't like this. But to say I don't like it before we even tried it, you're seeing such an increase, and that's where you're seeing such an increase with autism. So can you blame it on the cognitive affecting the I don't want to eat, or is it the I don't want to eat affecting the cognitive? That's where the fine lines go in, but eating is movement. It's a movement, it needs to happen. We are meant to do that. We rest our bodies and we don't eat when we're sleeping, but we're eating morning, noon, and night. Probably a bit too much for most of us, but eating is a really important milestone, and it stays with us like gravity to the day we die. You know what I mean? A lot of, I'm not riding a bicycle today and I'm not going to do it tomorrow. But eating, we have to do from the moment we're born to the, like breathing. There's certain milestones, not reflexes, guys, milestones that are meant to incorporate, mature, change, and evolve. And that also creates, that's why Marco Polo went to China, you know what I mean, for food. the sugars, the salts, and all that. Migration of humans were after food, which were after eating. It has evolved us and will continue to evolve us. But the fact that most people are sitting with a cell phone and not eating as much, not enjoying their food, and all that, it's why you got right now, you got a whole generation nobody wants to work. Is it laziness? Or are we really messing with milestone involvement to a lesser degree?